I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh,
Well done, team.
All right, thank you very much. I just have to give, I was going to do this later, but given our, we saw how difficult that was to simultaneously coordinate speaking at the same time. It gives you so much more appreciation for the Capitol Singers at Leon High School, who managed to not only, you know, hit the right notes at the right time, but be in accord with one another and all of those different parts. So kudos to all of our creative teachers and others who have found a way to bring folks together in unison or in harmony, and to carry on through even our elective subjects. And so we're grateful for all the parents and the students and the teachers and the community for continuing to suffer through this with us together. We will get through this stronger together, and we're just grateful for all minds. We're going to talk tonight a little bit, I think, about asking community stakeholders to weigh in with their suggestions and their ideas, and we're so grateful for the many, many partnerships that we have with groups like the United Way. I heard an ad on the radio this morning about reading to students, and our, of course, Second Harvest, and the folks who've helped us, Four Rivers, and others who've helped us with our meal distributions. So many, many partners, many, many stakeholders, many, many minds coming together to help us navigate these unprecedented times. And we're very, very grateful for all of our partnerships, including the city and the county. And our we're going to have a meeting later this week, I think on Thursday, maybe it's next week, sorry, but with the chair of the county commission, the mayor, myself, the superintendent, the president of FSU, president of TCC, and the stakeholders from our healthcare community. That is a meeting that will be the second of such type meeting during the pandemic, as we try as a whole community to figure out all the different moving parts and pieces. So we look forward to that. And with that, I'll thank you for being here tonight. For all who are participating virtually or watching us online, we thank you for your interest and your support of our school system. Ms. McKinney-Williams, I believe you wanted to make a note about yesterday's meeting before we get started.
Yes, yesterday's agenda review workshop meeting. We had a lot of topics that were being discussed, and one point on the agenda that we did not cover was whether there were any speakers to be heard, and there were no speakers. So I did want it to be on the record at a meeting that there were no speakers for the prior agenda review workshop meeting.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do we have speakers for tonight's meeting?
We do not as of now. I will check again before we get to item 6, and I'll let you know.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was trying to access my agenda on the other computer. This, excuse me. I love it when technology works.
yes.
All right, are there changes and additions?
Yes.
Yes, Madam Chair, there are just a couple. I will read them now. Item 7.01, school board meeting minutes, April 28th, 2020, add documentation. Number 2, item 7.02, school board workshop agenda, review minutes, April 27th, 2020, add documentation. Add item number 3, 19.03, amendments to the 2019-2020 school board meeting calendar. I move the acceptance of these changes and additions.
Very good. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Wood, motion by Ms. Bowen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Without objection, show it unanimously approved. I do want to add that our incredible school board secretary, Ms. Coffey, does a phenomenal job. And I know she was concerned about being, as she put it, late getting these minutes into the record. But I just want you to know that part of the reason for that is that she has been distributing food and called to the front lines of other more pressing items. And we've had extra meetings and lots of things to record. So we're we are dutiful in getting all of those I's dotted and T's crossed in a timely fashion, but we have our priorities in order. And I just want to publicly thank Ms. Coffey, who, bless her heart, I mean, she will meet me on the street corner to sign papers. There are a lot of moving parts in a big school district like ours with over 4,500 employees and 34,000 students and 50 schools. And now they're all over in every living room across our district. So thank you, Ms. Coffey, for your great work.
Great.
All right.
Thank
Mr. Superintendent, do you have a spotlight, or you want to wait until we get into conversations? I think you're muted, Mr. Superintendent.
Yeah, no, no spotlight tonight, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and I don't see any recognitions or reports heard other than item 5.04, which of course relates to the COVID pandemic. Mr. Superintendent.
Yeah, Madam Chair. First, I would like to announce, after our discussion yesterday and meeting with my staff today, I feel like it's time for us to form a Reopen Leon Schools task force. I think that would be appropriate, that I would have 10 members of my cabinet and my staff, along with 10 members represented by you all as board members, your designees, a 20-person Reopen Leon Schools task force that will, the Dr. Gale will chair and oversee, and we will be getting meeting sooner rather than later. We have a model that other colleges really are using. I know Tallahassee Community College, Florida State, and state universities are using a similar model that we can kind of gain some of their insight into what's worked well and what hasn't. But I think it's important for us moving forward to go ahead and engage and enact a Reopen Leon Schools task force that has 2 representatives from each of you, as well as 10 members of my staff, and start talking about issues related to health and the health aspects of COVID, the budget aspects of COVID, the academic aspects of COVID, the technology, digital divide, connectivity, and all of those things surrounding what's going to have to be in place before our students return in August and what that looks like. So I wanted to announce that we'll be forming that, and that Dr. Gale will be reaching out to you all individually to talk about your representatives that you would like to see. And I think Mr. Jones had a question.
I think that's an excellent idea. Mr. Jones?
Yes, besides the 10 persons that would come, that would be recommended by members of the board, aren't there some other constituent groups that or representations or institutions we'd like to see represented beyond who we would possibly appoint, like, say, for example, the academic community, the medical community, perhaps the business community, for example, the chamber leadership, the heads of hospitals, representatives from the academy, like the deans of all 3 colleges of ed that are found here in our community, from Flagler, FSU, FAMU, such that there are some voices that I think need to be informed, that would inform our project Leon Schools reopening beyond your cabinet and beyond our recommendations.
Yeah, and to your point, Mr. Jones, I agree with that. Now, I don't think we want 30 or 40 people. So maybe each of you have 1 appointee or 1 citizen, and then the other 10 spots are left for just the people you were discussing. So it's in its infancy stages right now. We can discuss it and talk through it, but just the general concept of us having a Reopen Leon Schools task force, I think, would be very worthwhile and something we need to move on sooner rather than later. And the exact structure, though, is certainly up for discussion.
Well, Mr. Superintendent, I'm very, very happy that you've taken that recommendation into consideration. I think it's going to really help to get us that type of community buy-in and investment and subsequent engagement that I think our school district needs and deserves, because the decisions that we make will have impact as well as provide opportunity for a generation. And so thank you for being willing to open up to convene such an important group. Now, and may I also ask, and I'm just curious to know, why are you not chairing the task force as superintendent?
Well, Mr. Jones, I certainly could, but I trust in Dr. Gale, and I I have a lot going on right now. I mean, I certainly don't mind cheering. I just feel as though Dr. Gale would be a better person along with my immediate cabinet, because I'm kind of stretched thin right now as it is, and I've been very hands-on, and I have a lot of capable people out here that are wanting me to lean on them a little more, and they're in a position to do that. And Dr. Gale and Ms. Gregory and Dr. Cox and Dr. Rogers and John Hunkiar, you know, it's all of us in this together, but I will certainly be, you know, an arm's length away from those discussions, as well as the ones that Ms. Gregory is working with as we work on Pandemic 2.0 for August. So that was kind of my thought behind naming Ms. Gale, Dr. Gale, the chair, and then they would, you know, be a direct report to me as to what exactly the activities and what's going on.
Mr. Superintendent, thank you. I appreciate you considering that after yesterday's conversation. So it sounds like we as a board have an opportunity to appoint one or two folks to serve on the Reopen Leon Schools Task Force. And then also we can make recommendations for folks that we would like to have serve either ourselves or a member of the community on the focus group areas that are going to be parents, you know, teachers, principals, and so forth. And so I just wanted to make sure that I am clear about that, and also to be sure that as we, as board members, as we begin to think about who might fill those roles, if we could share who you think you're going to appoint, and kind of with a parenthetical, this is the community that is represented by this person's set of experiences or expertise, so that we can make sure it's a balanced approach. So for example, if, let's just say, if one of you was going to appoint the CEO of a hospital, then I might be more interested in appointing somebody from a different area of expertise. But I want to make sure that we have balance on the committee that represent all aspects of, from the health perspective to the academic perspective to the mental health perspective, safety and security, parent involvement, student involvement, transportation, food, and so forth. Mr. Superintendent.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Madam. Real quick, Ms. Bowen. Yes, Madam Chair, I agree. And like I said, this is something that we just discussed this morning. So it's, again, we're in the beginning stages of forming this group. I think by the end of the week, we'll be much better positioned as to who the stakeholders need to be at the table of those 20 spots. And it may not be 10 members of my staff, it may only be 8 members of my staff. I mean, I was just giving an example or a rough draft of what it may look like. But I think to iron out the details by the end of the week, and then to move forward the first of next week with scheduling, and then coming up with, you know, the meat of each meeting's topic, what the topic of the discussion will be. And again, we can learn a lot, I think, from the college system and what some of the universities are doing.
Absolutely.
And Ms. Bowen, I think you have a question, but not to state the obvious, but the one thing that strikes me is colleges and universities have a whole lot more discretion and flexibility when it comes to DOE rules, and but they also have more mandates from their professional accreditations, but they aren't legally responsible for transporting students to and from school. So just to state the obvious, as I said. Ms. Bowen, you had something to ask?
Yes, I was going to make certain that we understood that we're talking about now 2 groups or perhaps more, the Reopening Schools Task Force, as well as the other focus groups that we talked about on yesterday.
Yes, ma'am.
And a date certain, if there is one, by which you, Mr. Superintendent, would need us to get you the names of our representatives, would be probably important to get this moving. And I do think it's a wonderful idea. So a date by which you want our names in would probably help you to move this a little faster.
Okay, I see you, Mr. Jones, but I also see Ms. Wood is trying to ask a question. So I'm going to go to her and I'll come back to you if that's okay. Ms. Wood?
Again, I like the task force idea. I know if it gets too big, it becomes unwieldy. And it might be that you have a small group and have committees that deal with all that list that Ms. Rasmussen just laid out very well, I thought. And I think once we have those topics, then I agree that that's how we should make our appointments, based on we need a representative from this, that, the other. But, you know, a meeting of 20 people is tough. So if people are coming, you know, on committees and then they come back to report, I think that's great. I'd also really like to see a role for each board member, whether it's on a focus group or on the task force itself. I think, you know, all of us bring our own expertise to this situation. We all have insights and experience, and that's why we ran for this office and are on the board. And so I hope that as we consider this, we figure out how the board can be involved.
Thank you, Ms. Wood. I couldn't agree more. Ms. Striplin, I know I got you, Mr. Jones, but Ms. Striplin, I neglected. Pat, thank you. Ms. Striplin?
No, that's okay. I just wanted to thank Superintendent for this. This is an excellent idea. And I know this is the route we went with the Children's Service Council, and it was very fruitful. So I would say the one bit of input would be time is of the essence. So, you know, it would be my request that we be advised of the community members that are going to sit prior to us making appointments, and then having some kind of timeline, you know, within a week or two, that we get the members set and are able to move forward. Because like we said the other day, August is going to be here before we know it. So thank you for this. I think it's a wonderful idea.
And I want to add, I'm sorry, I'm coming to you, Mr. Jones, I promise, but I neglected, and this was a complete oversight, I neglected in my listing to mention the somebody from, whether it's the chamber or the minority chamber or the business community itself, because as I mentioned, and as we all know, there's a consistent belief that the economy will not recover until children are back in school. And we know that our working parents are struggling with trying to figure out how to care for and educate virtually their children while returning to work. And so I want to make sure that one of the subcommittees on the task force, or however you decide to organize it, Mr. Superintendent, has a business and economic impact perspective. Okay, Mr. Jones, sorry.
Yes, ma'am. And that was one of the sacred cows that I mentioned also at the very beginning, that we would have those persons represented. And I know we all are aware that large committees can become unwieldy. And I think that my colleague, School Board Member Woods, is right, that they would then be organized into committees such that those school board, our district leadership that have areas of expertise, that this would be able to inform what would ultimately be their work, their input, and will be the ultimate design. And so that's why, so with components like law enforcement and other areas of concern, pedagogy and instruction with the deans and others, right? And so I don't have a problem with the size of it being large, as long as we're able to find ways by enlisting district leadership to help to manage it, and then to also be informed by its work. Because this is major, this is huge for us. And again, as I cited yesterday, we are the 10th most educated community in our country. There are only 9 cities that have more educated people per capita than Tallahassee, Leon County. And so that is an enormous resource as we talk about the reimagining and the redesign of public school education in our community. So I'm not intimidated by the size. I just want to make certain that that important and impactful and meaningful voices are missed in this conversation as we talk about convening this task force. So I look forward to seeing the list that you'll bring back to us.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right, Mr. Superintendent.
So one thing that would help, though, you asked if you would put some of the things you just shared. I'm sure Dr. Gale was trying to take notes as quickly as possible. But if you could capture some of your key thoughts and components of your recommendations, and then email them to me and copy Dr. Gale, I think that would be very helpful if we could do that by tomorrow, and then we can look at those commonalities, and then look to reach out to other people in the community to gain their support, and then circle back with you all next week when we meet again to get your representatives, or even before then, to get someone that you're going to recommend. And if there's a way for us to directly involve, if we say these are the components, if we break it down into 5 or 6 categories, and each one of you can be then directly involved in one of those categories, given your expertise and in your interest, then maybe we can do that too. You know, obviously we can't have 2 or 3 of you on any one group, but if as an example, Ms. Wood is interested in this one with academics, and someone else interested in the health aspect, someone else interested in the security, someone else in the business. I mean, so as we form these subgroups of the big group, with you all and your direct involvement, I think would be helpful as well. But I will, if you would capture those things that you've said in writing, send them to me and Dr. Gale, and then we'll expedite that work quickly to have something finalized by the end of the week. In the meantime, we have the results of our survey, which are right here. We had almost 3,000 parents respond to our survey, and it was a very simple, open-ended survey. Relation to distance learning, please describe an area of strength or things that have been going well in relations to learning home experience. And then on the other end of the spectrum, please describe an area we could improve or things that you would like to see done differently. And there's a lot of good things to glean out of here, and it was done by school. I can say, as an example, a parent that has students at Buck Lake and Swift Creek, teachers have been extremely supportive and flexible, have done a good job giving assignments. A pre-K parent from Hartsfield, the communication with teachers was awesome. You can tell they really care. Parent for the 3rd grader at Riley and Raw, I have been able to access all assignments and maintain communication with teachers. Thank you so much for all of your efforts. So I think there are things that we can glean on both sides as we digest this and we get it to our school administrators that will add to the work of these groups that are moving forward. But in the meantime, like we said, August is going to be here before we know it. But having said that, I know we had a lengthy, about a 2 or 2.5 hour conversation yesterday about all things related COVID, most of it surrounding what Jillian was going on in her shop with COVID 2.0 and what that may look like for us. So I have all of my staff that are on this call online. And so I think I want to open it up for questions, and maybe you can direct where you'd like to go from here. And then my staff members can respond to anything that you want to address or questions you may have on May the 12th.
I'll start since they're being unusually shy. I am concerned, as I've mentioned several times, based on my experience with the budget. And, if we know that, I think it was today that the governor said, let's wait and see what kind of money comes down from the federal government before we start looking at budget cuts. But I will tell you again that in the early 90s, when I worked in the Appropriations Committee, Disney, I don't think closed for a single day. And so I'm very concerned about, I know we have a healthy reserve, I think it's $4 billion, but Medicaid, as people go on unemployment and then they need Medicaid and then they need food stamps, when that starts to happen, you've got more money going out and less money coming in the form of a sales tax revenue stream, which is, of course, dependent on tourism to a large degree for us. So that results in budget cuts. And for us, if we know that we have to cut, let's just say, for example, we have to cut, I'm picking this out of the air, but let's say we have to cut $100,000, which we're going to have to do way more than that. But let's say it's $100,000. Well, if we wait until the middle of the year, we might be able to get away with cutting half a position now that would be spread across 12 months rather than having to cut 2 positions 6 months into the calendar year. So I'm just concerned about how we could be, fiduciary. And I know Kim and her staff have been looking at where we have room to cut or where we have room to stay, but how does that mesh with the school calendar, with reappointments and I don't know that you've got a perfect answer tonight. I'm sure you don't, Mr. Superintendent, but could Ms. Banks weigh in on the budget situation? Go ahead, Ms.
Kim, can you hear me? I'm not sure if I'm unmuted or not.
Yes, I can hear you. Everybody, yep, you're good.
Okay. So we've been working, as I updated 2 weeks ago, we've been going through, we've prepared a list. We're looking right now, we're planning for, we have different scenarios looking at a 10% budget reduction, a 15% budget reduction, all the way up to a 20% budget reduction. But just like you said, we have no idea what it looks like. We know we have some federal funding coming. We don't know if there's going to be another set of relief coming from the federal government. And we still really haven't received any information from the state. So what we're doing right now, we have been meeting with all the different district offices, looking at what efficiencies we can make, what that totals to. We're also looking at the staffing plan, what that looks like. We're looking all over for basically any type of savings that we can come up with. And then we're going to be bringing those plans back to you all as far as the different options. I mean, kind of when you get into like the 15% reduction and the 20% reduction, some of those are, you know, more drastic and more serious reductions. But the problem is we have no information from the state right now. And we don't know, to your point, we don't know how bad it is. Yes, Disney's been shut down, you know, for several months now, but we don't know what that looks like. Even with our own revenue streams, they run 2 months in the rears. So I can't even tell you yet what our impact is, like looking at our sales tax dollars. So we don't really know how to project what, you know, we don't really know what we're planning for at this point because EDR doesn't have any information and they're doing the same thing. I think as we get closer to the end of the month and the beginning of June, we'll probably have a better idea about what the impact is going to be like for the state. And then that will help dictate our plans and how far of a cut we have to take. But we are planning, and we are planning on making those changes at the beginning of the year. Like, we're not going to go and wait for a special session and go halfway through. Like, we will be making those, and we will be coming back to you all with the different items that we've kind of put together as far as what we could cut and what it would mean.
Good, I'm glad to know that. Ms. Wood, you're muted.
Sorry. Well, thanks for bringing that up, Ms. Rasmussen. I know that's one of your specialties is the budget and the legislature. So I'm so glad you're here to share your expertise on that. And that's a perfect example of how you could be working with Kim Banks, looking at these issues together and bringing your expertise on that. So thank you for that. I had a question earlier, and what is the date that you were planning to do reappointment, Superintendent? Has that been announced yet?
Dina, you want to weigh in on that?
Yes.
Dina,
Can you hear me now?
now we
Yeah,
can.
go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, Madam School Board Chair, board members. We're in the process, Ms. Wood, to work with the bargaining chairs for each unit. So Mr. Showers and Carlin Talls for 1010, Sharia Griffin and Lisa Stevens for LESPA, and Sharia Griffin and Scott Mazer and the leadership teams on Thursday and Friday of this week. We're going to look at the reappointment process and allow the members of those bargaining units to make recommendations and to kind of hear what our directives have been per the potential opportunities for renewing of teachers. So we're looking to keep as many teachers, but if we lose some teachers by way of resigning or they're moving or retiring, we're going to look to see how we can fill positions with teachers who may otherwise be looking for different opportunities within the district. So we don't have a date certain. Our first goal is to meet with each leadership team of the bargaining units to hear feedback, to hear their concerns, and to get their ideas and the best way that we can handle the reappointment process.
So real quick, also, first back to Kim and the exercise we've been going through over the course of the last 3 weeks. You know, we had already done a significant amount of cutting at the district level, which has afforded us to increase our minimum wage, to give money to the arts and athletics, to have all the security monitors. I mean, we've done so many good things over the last 3 years. And a lot of that was because we cut or trimmed a lot of the stuff that was out here in Never Never Land. And we're going to go through this exercise again, but we had already committed a lot of the resources that were out here in the past back down into our schools. And it kills me now that we're in this situation, because we have done so many good things over the last 3 years, especially for our blue collar employees, our bus drivers, food service workers. And we're going to do everything we possibly can to try to keep Leon County schools from adding to the number of Americans that are unemployed. But we are going to have some tough decisions to make over the course of the next several weeks and in the months to come. One thing that we told our principals today, we are looking to put annual non-instructional to extend them to another year of annual contract. The annual exempt employees, including most of the people that are on this call tonight, will be placed on a 6-month contract, not a 12-month contract, out of the abundance of caution. They shouldn't. The only message in that is we don't know what we don't know, and we have to do everything we can to protect for the future of our school system. And we just simply can't make commitments if we aren't 100% sure that we can pay for those things we've committed to. So those are some of the tough decisions we're making. Kim can go on to a list of many others. When it comes to teachers, those staffing plans have been reduced significantly. But as one school loses, but we also looked at our title programs. As one school loses, another school may be having people. Well, we had a middle school principal who knows she's losing 4 teachers. Well, there may be a school that's losing 4 teachers that this middle school can plug in. So it's doing those creative things to try to shift people around to keep them employed to the best of our abilities. But to Kim's point and Adina's point, it's going to be some tough times ahead.
I don't, Mr. Superintendent, I appreciate all of that, and I really do. And I know how hard it is but I've been through this a few times, both as a school board member, but also with the state. And I've watched appropriators struggle, and I've seen various approaches. And sometimes rather than trying to just, as you said, we've already made some pretty substantial cuts. You've got administrators wearing 3 and 4 hats that, you used to have a lot more depth on the administrative bench. And so in a way, we're already kind of cutting into the bone, so to speak. And there's an old saying in Washington, don't, when people want to get everybody riled up, they talk about, well, we'll tear down the Washington Monument. I'm not talking about doing that. But I do think sometimes it's, in a way, we should be looking at those bigger issues. Like in 2008, we had to shut down Bellevue Middle School. We shut down the Academic Resource Center. Those were tough. And I'm not suggesting we need to shut down any schools or shut down any programs, but sometimes those big ticket, if there are ways where it makes sense to merge programs or pull things together, that, those can be not an easier way, but a more efficient and palatable way to get to where we need to be. I just think we all should brace ourselves for what could be coming, which may be very, very, I don't know, but hopefully.
Well, and to Ms. Wood's point, this is obviously, you have many strengths. This is certainly one of them, Ms. Rasmussen. So any advice and things that you'd be working with Kim and Naomi, as having been a tenured member of this board with a lot of experience, I think it's going to be welcome at this time and more critical now, to have you as a board member involved to get us, through this situation. We're going to lean on you and Ms. Bowen and some of the others that have been around that have seen things like this come and go before, where some of us, the rest of us really haven't. So now more than ever, we're going to be leaning on the two of you and your experience.
Well, I appreciate that. It won't be fun, but we'll get through it together. And are there other questions?
I just wanted to, Chairperson Rasmussen, this is Dina McAllister. I just wanted to assure you all that we're going to work the process. We're not going to arbitrarily allow any of our employees to be released without going through our due diligence to make sure that we vetted every opportunity to make sure that we can place people where they're going to be most effective. And we want to make sure that we're running the district fiduciarily well and not, so if we have people who are overstaffed in this area, we may shift them over to support another area so that we can be efficient at the district level, as well as at the school sites. So please know that we're going to work closely with the unions, and then we'll report back to you all the information that we have as it pertains to employees.
Okay, Mr. Jones. Thank you, Ms. McAllister.
Thank you, Mrs. McAllister, and thank you, Mr. Superintendent. This also goes back to the point that I also made in yesterday's agenda review about the importance of us possibly doing a skills survey of our Leon County School District faculty and staff, whereby as we make these types of long-term decisions, we might find out where a person's strengths that may not very well have been captured at the time of their hiring, but skills that they may have secured, or the graduate degrees they may have secured since they first came on board, that might be of use to us as we reimagine and apportion our school district in terms of both human resources and financial resources. I think that would be this would be a great time to perhaps find out where people's interests and skills may lie as a part of what we're doing as it relates to appointments.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Wood?
I think Ms. Triplin was next.
I'm sorry, Ms. Triplin?
Thank you. While we're all kind of throwing out, I think we all have a lot of the similar concerns and we overlap a lot. So I appreciate the budget discussion because I think that's top of mind, you know, for all of us, and especially for our teachers and our staff and the people who work so hard to educate our kids. My concern, a big concern going forward, is technology, and I've said it several times. I think my exposure to being a teacher at Deer Lake Middle School, all the way to to running an agency where we serve predominantly kids in Title I schools. I'm afraid that digital divide is just going to grow. It's just going to become larger and larger for the kids that don't have the access, don't have the technology, don't have possibly that support system at home. Some of the kids in our program that rely on their mentors who, are now may not be allowed to come in our schools in the fall. So that technology component is really, really important to me. And I also see it as, I think Mr. Jones just brought it up, an opportunity for some of our teachers who feel their strengths lie in that area. Would they rather be home teaching virtually? They've really, some of them love this new model. They love the flexibility. They love the technology component. Some of them hate it. I know, Rocky, you've said that about, your wife. They want to be back in the classroom. So is this an opportunity for us to teach the kids that want to be in that virtual world with the teachers that excel in that format? And possibly, those children want to keep learning that way. Those families want to keep that as an option. And then there are families that need their children to go back to a facility. They need those meals. They need that supervision. They need that guidance. Those are the children that need to be in our brick and mortar schools. And so is there some kind of, option that we look at? And I know that that'll be part of the task force moving forward and part of Jillian's group. And I know that was already one of the models, but we have teachers that have different strengths in different areas. And, but I really feel like that technology component is something that we can look at again, maybe like we never have before. And if it's a year where, all grade level, so a third grade, every third grader, let's say we have to retreat. Are we prepared for that? Are we prepared with our technology to have every grade level goes back home? God forbid, but that happens. And they're all learning the same thing from the same platform with the same teacher. And so that's not by our choice. That's not the way we would have it. We would have every teacher have their own autonomy, but this is not a year of choice. This is a year of what do we have to do to survive? And if that's what that commands from us, then that's what we need to be able, just like we talked about, the tough decisions. Those are the decisions that I think we need to be prepared as far as a virtual curriculum. Are we set up for that kind of model where no matter what zip code you live in, you are being taught the exact same thing, the exact same way, and you have access to the exact same technology? Those are the things that I'm concerned about. And again, I know I brought this up before, but this is the time. We have been so cost efficient over the years, and superintendent has reduced our debt to, to a very minimal percentage. And if there is a time to bond and get our school district through, now is the time to look at that option. Do we need to take on some debt to provide for our students and to provide, for our employees? And I know that's something that Kim, I know that's in her world, and she understands that more than anybody. And I hope that's a component that we're looking at going forward. If there's ever a time to, to take out that money to make it work for our kids and for our teachers and for our families, now is it. So, so those are the things that I'm interested in learning about and seeing where we go moving forward.
And to that point, and I see all of you have your hand up, so let me just say before we leave Ms. Strickland's point, Mr. Superintendent, are we surveying our teachers to find out who would be interested in, if we end up having to have some sort of a hybrid, or heaven forbid, an exclusively virtual world?
We met with Jessica Lowe today to talk about Leon. She has a number of employees that she has not had conversations with right now, so I don't think I'm at liberty really to go into a lot of details, other than, yes, we are planning to prop up a K-12 program, just to Ms. Strickland's point, that if we have families that, would rather return to a virtual model full time and not return to brick and mortar, that Leon County Schools has a place for them to go. Absolutely.
Okay. There have been some rock stars. I mean, my goodness, I don't mean to call him out, but the second grade teacher who used the fire truck from Roberts, wow. There are some rock stars that have really shown their stuff in this otherwise, it's a silver lining for us. And I hope that the schools that know who those folks are, those administrators, are sharing that information with Jessica and really looking to find those people who really shine in that world.
And real quick, I know you got a bunch of hands going up. So real to that point, we're going to do some restructuring as to how we attack our virtual program and what we're offering that is more financially stable and better for us to use as a model. And then also to Ms. Strickland's point about devices, I couldn't agree with you more. We are actively pursuing, and I don't want to jump ahead of Ms. Banks or Mr. Nimmons, looking at the cost of one-to-one, what that would look like, where we get the biggest bang for our buck, how we can incorporate it into what the platforms we have. Do these devices work with our online textbooks? But we are working as fast as we possibly can behind the scenes to come up with options to present to the board to say, okay, we come up with a plan or a program, but we're looking at about, let's just throw a number out there, $2.5 million a year for 4 years to commit to this program. And then maybe that's what we do. We have 34,000 devices. It costs $10 million over 4 years. It's $2.5 million. We say, let's do it for 4 years, commit those dollars. But that's if we have those dollars. Again, it goes back to our sales tax is getting hammered right now. And if only 25% of FSU kids come back in the fall, it's going to take a beating again this fall. So we need to make sure that we can pay off our existing debt before we commit to new debt. And that's going to be something that, but that Kim's going to have to balance and find the answers to. But that we do have a plan for you guys to say, this is what we've come up with. What do you think?
Great. All right. I know everybody has a hand up. So Ms. Wood.
I have not spoken.
Let Ms. Bowen go.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Ms. Bowen.
Ms. Bowen.
Yes. I'm listening to all that's been said and agree with it. And I'm hearing the amount of concern and energy that must be expended and has been expended to make sure that our students want to come back to school and to make school safe enough that our children want to come back too. I think that has to be said right now. And at some point, once we get all of these groups together and start to look at short days, long days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever Saturday kind of school we're going to have, and the planning and the coordination that we're going to have to put into this, at some point, some of it feels a little bit overwhelming. And having talked to parents, that's how they're feeling right now. And so it's good for us to have this conversation so that they can hear us and understand how we understand what they are feeling. And I also agree with the point that we need to make certain that we take a look at how we can accommodate teacher differences when they teach our children that, because I think that every scenario and every grade is going to have to be looked at kind of individually. I'm not sure that I really follow all children will be learning the same thing, the same time, the same way. I think that I don't want us to lose the individual learning styles of our students as we prepare to get our students on board. So again, that no child is left behind, but we're doing the best we can to make certain that all students have the kind of instruction that they need individualized yet. Ms. Strickland's point about the devices is certainly something that I agree with, and the hotspots that I think that we provided is something that I know that we need to continue with to make certain that the digital divide does not cause any of our students to be left behind, and to re-image education in a way that I think we're going to do. I wish that would be some way that we could get some more dates of certainty with when we're going to hear from the state and budget and monies and what we can do about that much earlier. But you know, I understand that the politics and all of this is just what it is. But to still be on the forefront and the grounds up level to make certain that our children have what they have is what I'm interested in. And when we start to decide on those areas of committees and focus group, I'm interested in being on that, the one that's going to deal with the health piece. Okay, so I needed to throw that in now. So I think we're on our way, but it's still going to be all hands on deck to get us where we need to do to make sure that students are safe first and foremost, and that they want to come back to school. Because if our parents don't feel that we're doing with their help to make the learning environment safe, then I think, you know, our enrollment could drop off in lots of ways. So I needed to throw that in there.
Thank you. Ms. Wood.
A couple things. Superintendent, when you and Chair Rasmussen meet with the mayor and everybody next week or whenever that is, I hope you will talk about how as a community we can work on the digital divide. It makes a lot of sense to me that we would be purchasing devices for our kids because we want them to go with our platform and so forth. But the internet connectivity, I believe, was just about as big a problem as devices. And so that seems to be something that we need to enlist the county and the city government, because it's not just the students, but it's the parents and everybody else who are also dependent on being able to access the internet. So I hope, you know, when we talk about bringing together the chamber and all sorts of people, I think that needs to be at the top of our priority as something we work on together, because we probably can't fund that ourselves. I don't think we have the capacity to that. But maybe as a community, and hopefully we'll get some, you know, federal and state help on that as well. But to me, that's a top priority, is when we do the digital divide, people have to have, you know, equal access to the internet. So I'm really happy about the buses, but you know, that solved a part of the problem, but it's not going to solve the whole problem.
Well, I mean, as telemedicine becomes more important, that's the same issue.
Right.
So
there was one more thing I had, but just
sorry.
I'll let Mr. Jones go, and then I'll come back. I think he wanted the.
Mr. Jones, and then Ms. Strickland, did you have something else?
Just one more thing.
Mr. Jones, you're still muted.
Okay. One of the things I think is important is that as we move forward, and that's why there's engagement, and I'm delighted to hear Ms. Gregory when she talked with us yesterday about the focus groups, so that we can hear all voices that will be ultimately affected I think when we talk about this major that we will hear that will be included will be our TAC, our dignity, and our early learning committees. All of those citizen advisory committees should also be a part of that, part of the voices that are captured in that major committee. Can you hear me still?
It's
Yes.
supposed to keep going.
One of the things that what I want us to also realize that this is a finely nuanced undertaking. We cannot paint, as we redesign and reimagine our school district and the way that we provide cognitive experiences for our children, the superintendent is wise as he enlists other voices to participate. We can't paint this with a broad brush. It requires nuanced strokes, fine tips, such that no demographic, to include our Title I children, our special needs children, our kids who require, our ELS children, all of our children who will require, and then to be able to have a variety and a buffet of mediums and methods by which we provide instruction. School board member Bowen described it as overwhelming, but at the same time, it's also very exciting. We have the opportunity to craft a brand new school district right here in the shadow of the state capitol for a community of children who are as bright and as diverse as can be found anywhere in America. And so it gives you great pause and excitement and enthusiasm, because what we're going to do is going to have impacts for a generation. So I'm just happy with the types of discussions that we're having. Again, I think Ms. Wood's point is very well made when you have that meeting with our colleagues. It's going to require the buy-in from every aspect of our community for this reimagined school district.
All right.
Madam
Ms.
Chair?
Remember what you wanted to say?
I did. So I wanted to give the superintendent an opportunity, as well as Ms. Gregory. We had a lengthy discussion about, 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different possibilities. And I think they were taken a little out of context in a report today that made it sound like those were the 4 choices. And that is not what I heard at our meeting yesterday. I heard that we were going to, it's soup to nuts. Everything's on the table and we don't really have a plan yet. So I don't want the community to get the wrong idea that, there's 4 options and we're picking from those 4. Am I correct on that, Superintendent? Maybe Ms. Gregory could expand on that as well as yourself.
Yeah, before Jillian jumps in, you're absolutely correct. And let's be clear, that decision will not be made by us. That decision will be made by the governor and the Department of Education as to which of those scenarios plays out. That's not going to be a local decision. So we are just preparing for any scenario that may be handed down by Governor DeSantis or Commissioner Corcoran. I can't believe you're even considering only half the kids come back. That decision won't be made by me or by you all, but it may be made at a higher level, and we're going to have a plan in place to react if that's the direction we're given. And we said from the beginning, we're not the healthcare experts, we're the education experts, and we're going to rely, and I'm sure the governor is relying on the healthcare experts to give him guidance on how best to reopen our public school system. I saw Dr. Fauci today talk about the dangers of completely just reopening and rushing everybody into 34,000 kids getting back on buses and in cafeterias and in hallways. So we are just preparing for any decision that will be made by the governor, by Ron DeSantis. So if you want to lobby one way or another, lobby the governor, lobby the commissioner, because we are going to respond and react and have a plan in place for whatever decision they make. Ms. Gregory, you want to expand on that some?
Before she does, can I just pause for a second and thank you? With all sincerity, this is the thing that I was most concerned about before any of us knew really what we were getting into, is that I was concerned that we weren't planning for unintended and unanticipated events. And now we're trying our best to be ready for anything that might come our way. And I really appreciate your openness to that and your being proactive. We've learned a lot from this experience, and we're taking that learning. I remember Mr. Wallen used to say, well, we are an educational institution. We learn from our decisions. And as long as we learn from them, we're doing the right thing. So I appreciate very much your being open to considering any eventuality that might, and there's probably still some things we haven't fully thought of, I'm sure, but based on the best information we have today, we're trying to do the best we can. Ms. Gregory.
Madam Chair, School Board Member, Superintendent, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think to begin with, and just to confirm, we are not making any decisions regarding returning to school, the percentage of students returning to school. Under your leadership and the superintendent's leadership, we've been tasked with imagining all the various scenarios that we potentially experience as a school district, knowing full well on probably February 13th, none of us ever would have thought that on March 13th, we would be closing for the remainder of the year. And quite frankly, when we got our directions from the state, we were told that we would be told in 2-week increments, remember? And so really when we were imagining how we would close out the fourth 9 weeks, we were going to be returning to school, right? We had one extra week of spring break, an extended spring break, and then it was only 2 more weeks. And so we put together in our best efforts, a system that was able to reach as many students as possible, given what we had available to us. And so, is it a perfect system? No, but we pivoted 34,000 children to learning in some capacity from home. And we are diligently working to collect and get feedback at every step of the way. I know we've done survey. The superintendent mentioned the survey that Dr. Gale implemented, where we got about 3,000 responses. But we also know that sometimes parents may not have access. And so we're also holding some small group office hours for the public to provide feedback to. The feedback from our community is critical. We serve our community. And so it is of paramount importance that we provide various mechanisms and avenues for the community to give us feedback. So what we've done is we have organized something, I think we're up to about 15 focus groups. And when we have these focus groups, they are done remotely and they're using Zoom or MS Teams, depending on which platform the focus group is most comfortable with. So those focus groups include our district advisory councils, parent focus groups, student focus groups, teacher focus groups, administrative focus groups, representative of both Title I and non-Title I schools, the LCTA, because we're trying to get all of the information. We're trying to get as much feedback as possible to inform our work, recognizing that time is of the essence. Now, what does that work entail? In my world, my scope is academics, right? So, to the point of, if we don't return to school, who's watching children, when we meet on our team, we say that's a parking lot item. We put it in the parking lot because that's not the scope of our work, right? Because this is a rabbit hole and we can go down it for a really long time because there are all kinds of what ifs out there. And the truth of the matter is, most, if not all of it, we don't control. We don't control what the governor says. We don't control what the commissioner says. We don't control what the statutes say and what statutes are waived and what statutes aren't waived. So what we're really trying to do is scope our work to understanding what could learning look like in our district on August 10th. And that means, what does it look like with 100% of students in attendance? What does it look like with 0% of our students in attendance and any variation thereof? And so what do our digital tools look like? What kind of professional development around the current course offerings that we have? What does scheduling look like? What do special areas and electives look like? And then really having conversation around what is an appropriate number of assignments per week, how much time, what is developmentally appropriate for time. A kindergartner is really different than even a third grader, and that's within an elementary school. So these are kind of questions that we're kind of weeding through in the academic services side right now. We have some overarching questions for our focus groups, and then we have these probing kind of exploratory questions about grade levels and what the student, the family, teacher experience was. And to Ms. Bowen's point, I would not feel well professionally saying that we would have a one-size-fits-all approach. to schooling in Leon County schools because our children are really different. Developmentally, we have to do things that are appropriate. You know, we don't want to put a kindergartner on the computer for hours and hours and hours and hours on end as a way of our academic plan. And so working towards bringing in principals and administrators to kind of get and teachers to get their perspectives on those by grade level, like the K-1-2 group, that primary group, those children have really different needs than even the intermediate children and certainly than the secondary children. And then the big question is, what are our resources? How much money do we have? Do I get to spend any money? I hear the superintendent and I hear Chief Financial Officer Banks really sharing with us that things are, we're in dire straits, but what can we do with what we have? And if we can't do with what we have, what are our resources? What do we need, right? And so an example would be English language arts. In elementary, our English language arts textbook is online. But at the secondary level, ironically, our English language textbook is not online. So what is it? So really doing an audit of what are the resources that we have available digitally? What don't we have available? And how can we pivot so that we can be ready on August 10th? And I do want to, you know, I know School Board Member Jones has talked about reimagining and retooling school. And I just want to be really clear that we absolutely take direction from the superintendent and from you, but August is really looming large. And so I want to manage expectations, really doing our very best to leverage everything we have to deliver the best educational experience for our children, the most consistent educational experience in terms of all children learning every day. And then, you know, maybe having a longer term plan, short term plan, midpoints, benchmarks, those kinds of things.
Madam Chair, may I interject this very quickly right now?
Mr. Jones had his hand up. If you don't mind, let him, and then I will call on.
No,
right.
I defer to the dean, Mrs. Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Of course, ma'am.
I feel a real strong need to say right now, as a board member, as a parent, a grandparent, and a great-grandparent, I am so proud to hear the honesty and the sincerity that this information is being shared with the community today. I think that goes a long way in showing how we do this work together. And I did not want this moment to pass with Jillian just having said what she said and with everybody's comments right now. When you're honest and truthful and you continue to be transparent, our community will do what they've always done, be there with us. And I just needed to say that right now. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
No, thank you, Madam Bowen. I wanted to just follow up with what Ms. Gregory said. I'm just delighted to hear you describe the level of engagement that will be a part of this refashioning of our school district. And I do use retool and reimagine our school district. One of the things that this pandemic has done, and I know that y'all are collecting surveys and the like, you are now armed with important empirical data about what has been the cognitive progress of our children. So armed with that information, we can't continue to pour old wine into old wineskins. We now are armed with data about how children have best had opportunity to learn and be engaged these last 2 months. So with that information does come an inherent and retooled and refashioned response about how we engage with our kids. We realize most specifically, Ms. Gregory, and you are the subject matter expert, that all kids are not going to learn in virtual platforms. And so for those who do not operate on that platform, then that is not the option that we make available to them. For those who may thrive in that platform and where parents have, here now we're doing what other movements have tried to describe, that they are providing choices. Well, here now, our school district, now armed with community support and buy-in, with technology, hotspots, and other accoutrements now added to the academic platform. Here now, we too can provide options. And that's all I'm talking about when I talk about a reimagined and a refashioned school district. We're now armed with data, and we now know our children even more intimately and where they thrive, where they had not been given opportunity to be tested in that way before, and then armed with the parent responses on how that has best facilitated learning for their kids, we now can be armed with more options. And I'm sure that will be part of the discussion that we'll hear from stakeholders as well as teachers, parents, others who will be engaged in what will be the conversations moving forward. But I'm so delighted and excited about what you described, Jillian. Thank you so very much.
And Jillian's taking this serious. I guess Kim has scared her. She looked behind her. She's already hocked all of the books on her bookshelves to help offset the budget cuts. So yeah, Kim is scared Jillian where she already hocked all of her books. Her shelves are empty.
I have a question, Madam Chair. It's a slightly different subject, and that's summer. Do we have any summer enrichment, any reading academies? What are we doing about summer?
And were we able to extend our like iReady and things like that for summer access for kids?
Super. I got it. Good evening. Yes. So a couple of different things. So just for the good of the group, in the summertime, historically in Leon County Schools, we offer a 3rd grade summer reading academy and something called extended school year for our ESC students who have been identified as in need of that those ESY services. At this time, ESY is scheduled to continue as identified by the ESC department. 3rd grade summer reading academy will not be occurring from the district at the district level or at the school level at this time, because the summer reading academy was face-to-face in traditional settings for our students who were level 1 students who are not able to be promoted because of the FSA. So if a student took the 3rd grade FSA, they earned a level 1 on that FSA, they were sent to summer reading academy, and then in summer reading academy they received a portfolio of work that determined whether or not they got promoted to 4th grade. And so because there's no 3rd grade summer reading academy, there's no requirement, because there's no 3rd grade FSA, there's no requirement for the summer reading academy. With that said, we do have data points collected throughout the course of the year that our school principals are working in collaboration with parents to make the most appropriate decisions for the child. As it relates to summer activities, we do not at this time have face-to-face summer instruction scheduled for our students. We are just beginning to discuss any kind of virtual learning, but iReady and Play-Doh, which are 2 applications that are used by students at home over the summer, or may be used at home by students over the summer. Generally speaking, they will be open until June 30th. However, in order for us to prepare for August 1st, we take them down in kind of a phased approach over the month of July to get them kind of re-rostered and do kinds of things like that. So summer is June and July. So to be super transparent, it is our expectation, my understanding today that in June, Play-Doh, iReady, they would be open. In July, they would not be open because we have to get ready for the next school year.
And that's understandable. And somebody's going to communicate that with parents, I hope.
We've been working with our school principals on that. And so if the school principal, but yes, I will make sure to circle back. Ms. Kroll, who's the director of elementary education, she and I had a conference call this afternoon, and we actually were talking about this. And so she's having a meeting with elementary principals in the coming days. And I've been invited to attend to discuss this with the elementary principals.
Great, thank you. I know that some of the schools have purchased from their own budgets different platforms that will still be accessible, and that's great too. Whatever we can do, if we can afford to do it, that makes sense to fortify our students' learning through the summer and not lose any more ground. That would be advantageous.
I think that, some questions that are around that have to do with like what teachers are managing it, what is the volume of students who are engaging, if there's an expectation. So there are some details, to be honest, and I want to be transparent, like there are some details that we need to work out. But I think right now, and what I will do is at your next board meeting, I will report back what the plan is with that. So the question is, are the applications open? The answer is yes, but there is some management stuff. Who's managing it? How many kids? Is it an assignment? Those kinds of things. that we need to kind of make sure work on and nail down and get back to you on.
Right. I think for those kids that they're used to going into their elementary school classroom, and when the teacher is busy with one group on one side of the room, the children know how on their own, without any help, to go and access their iReady or any number of those other either math or language arts functions, accelerated reading and so forth. And so if that's the kind of thing that they're already accustomed to doing, they know how to do it at school, they know how to log on, and then they can continue to do that even through June or part of July. That would be, I think, a good thing for those who either choose to or need to have some additional support. Thank you. Are there other questions that anyone wants to raise with regard to the COVID situation?
Well,
Ms. Wood.
just what I mentioned yesterday, and it sort of relates to what you just said. I hope that we're going to get a report about the success and or failures of who this worked for and who it did not work for. And I know that we're not finished yet, so we can't totally tell that. But that's something I would expect in June, to get a really detailed analysis of, maybe by school, where it worked, where it didn't, so we can really, see what our gaps are and what we need to reinforce or plug in. Just like you said, some people loved digital and some people hated it, and just what our success rate was for our students. That's real important to me.
But before school.
Oh, yeah. As soon as school's out, we'll have grades and teachers can give feedback, hopefully, on, who tried, who didn't try, how many, what percentage, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that data will communicate important information to us that will inform our steps moving forward.
Right.
Mr. Superintendent, several of us have raised this as a priority. Is Ms. Gregory's shop coordinating that research piece, or is that something that, do we need some grad assistants to help us from the colleges of ed, or?
No, ma'am. I mean, she's coordinating that. She's gathering that as we speak. And to Ms. Wood's point, we're also going to open up that same survey to our teachers about what went well, what didn't go so well, and then get their feedback as to the number of kids that were engaged, at different levels. So, Jillian and her team is going to work on that, because it also, like to Mr. Jones's point, lead to the work of the group to see how we can adapt and adjust moving forward.
Great.
And to be clear, if I may,
Sure.
I think what we're looking for in terms of success is percentage of students engaged at any particular site in the applications for instruction online.
Right.
And then, but we're not necessarily looking for because I think I've heard something, I want to just be clear on report card grades or anything like that. Like grading, I heard somebody say, and I just can I just get some clarification on that?
Well, I think I said that just as one way to see,
okay,
how many students ended up not passing their class because they didn't engage. But, there are different ways to gather that data. And I know that, grades don't tell the whole story. I think teachers really know the best what percent worked and didn't work and couldn't and could.
Very good. Okay, so we'll get that, as the superintendent mentioned, from the teachers, but also getting some of those usage reports by school, and then also connecting those usage reports with the instructional model the school used. So, for example, if a school X did not want to use one of the technology tools, iReady, for example, a low number in iReady would not necessarily be indicative of something, because the school principal made the decision iReady is not going to be the tool that we use. So what we'll do is we'll gather all that together to help the data and the context of the data to help provide that to you.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, that's the goal.
I would think anecdotal data from teachers that summarize that context is really important. Like, I mean, we've talked about this before with no grades in kindergarten. If a child goes from, 3 grades below reading level and gets all the way up to what would be, not acceptable for some children, but an extraordinary leap for others, then that context matters. So I think we're looking just to find an accurate picture with data points, because that needs to inform our decision making too. Did I see someone else that wanted to say something?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Strickland, thank you.
Thank you. I know we're trying to move on here and we'll wrap it up, but it just brought up a quick question about, as our more students are using technology and we're increasing, just their day-to-day operations of having to log in. I would assume that creates a lot of more of can't log in, need the password reset. There's just kind of internal issues that we all see at the school level. Have we addressed that on the district level as far as staffing in our technology and in our IT department? I would imagine this has put an increased load on their plate as well. Already possibly doing the work of 20 people, and there's, I don't know how many are over there, but not probably, they're doing an amazing job, but could use more hands. Are we shifted some people over there to help with that, or do we see an increased need as far as internally in the IT department?
Kim, you want to speak to that?
Sorry, I'm struggling with my mute button. Currently, what we've been using is our exempt staff to try to augment our help desk staff after hours. And so that's how we've basically been making it through at this point. Going into next year, it's going to depend. We've been working with TIS, like we've been working with all our other divisions to find efficiencies. So that's the kind of conundrum we're stuck in, is that we're trying to balance all these things. And, yes, if we do move towards an increase in virtual platform, we are going to have to, balance that out somehow with the support. But some of the options we're looking at also include support. So we're trying to evaluate all of them. And like I said, for right now, we're going to get by with using our exempt staff to help with help desk, after hours, all of that. But then, of course, we'll evaluate when it comes to next year what the needs are and what we can do.
Thank you.
All right, so are we ready to move on through the consent agenda and into the...
Madam Chair, let me just follow one last thing before we move on. Just an FYI for you all, on Monday, the governor started phase 1 a week ago by opening restaurants to 25% capacity. I guess salons, hairdressers, we talked about all that yesterday. We made a decision not to bring back our 12-month employees last week. We wanted to wait, out of the abundance of caution, go ahead and wait until the 18th. But on Monday, we are bringing back our 12-month employees to their sites, whether it's school and or district site. Of course, if they are in a position where they can continue to work remotely, as determined by the site administrator or department manager, that they will continue to work remotely. But for some staff members who can't, they will be returning to their specific site. If we have individuals or employees that are over the age of 65 or have underlying health conditions or have childcare issues, Ms. McAllister's shop will firefight those as needed. But we will ask our employees, 12-month employees, to return on Monday. They'll also give our teachers time. There'll be 3 weeks left that they can come in and do the end of the year protocols and clean up, whether it's with textbooks and other things that they can schedule. Those principals can schedule those teachers to come in and get the things done that they need to accomplish at the end of the school year, as well as collect the belongings for our students and families whose stuff is still in their lockers, so we can distribute that through our drive-through program that's been set up, that's been successful throughout the country. We'll continue to operate with the drive-through to get our kids' belongings back to them, and also to collect our belongings, whether they'll be textbooks, band instruments, uniforms, and things like that. We'll have a 3-week window where they can stage instead of everybody rushing there at one time. But on Monday, our employees will slowly start to return.
Mr. Superintendent, can you
Yes,
all
ma'am.
hear me? This is Dina McAllister. Just want to make sure that the board members do understand that our school sites will be closed to the public. So we will not be receiving, parents to come in unless they pre-schedule like he shared, along with organizing staff to come in intermittently so we don't have large groups of people coming into the building. We've also asked the principals to be mindful of this. No students running around coming on campus. We want to make sure that we're following CDC guidelines. We also will provide employees who do not have a mask with masks. If there is a need for gloves based on what they're doing at the school site, we'll have gloves that they can use to receive materials or to remove materials out of the building. So we are going to make sure that our employees are properly covered when they return to work. And then they can also use their own face cloth if they would like. So I just want to make sure you all were aware of that as well.
Question, please.
Thank you, Alistair. Ms. Bell?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So employees will be coming back to work. Of course, they will have the mask and gloves and such. Will there be social distancing will also be part of the expectation, Mrs. Superintendent?
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. I don't see Dr. Cox's name on my screen. He was in a really bad accident on Saturday and broke 2 bones in his leg. I told him that exercise thing was overrated, but he was on a bike and crashed and broke 2 bones and he's going to have surgery. But to Ms. McAllister's point, absolutely. Social distancing, the mask. We also have a price for blue cloth masks. Now, we don't have the LCS insignia on them yet, but anyway, but they can be reused. So we're going to take all the precautions necessary to ensure that our employees are returning in a very safe and organized manner.
And of course, I know that I'll just ask it anyway because someone asked me. Testing, we're not concerned about that at this point. We have no way of knowing whether these individuals have been, or how are you addressing that?
So we're going to do all of our schools have those shoot you in the forehead thermometers, right? They put the dot on you. So all of our employees, as they come back, will have their temperature checked. If it's over 100, they'll be sent home. And of course, if they're experiencing any symptoms of flu-like symptoms or COVID-like symptoms, that they would disclose that to their site administrators. We don't want those people anywhere around. And we're counting on the adults to do the right thing. And, we're on the honor system here. But if there are issues, that we'll address them. But yes, they will be screened. Now, they won't have to have gone through and been tested for COVID in order to return. But we will take their temperature as they return on site.
And I assume the same rules apply with regard to anyone who's left the country or been on a cruise or anything like that, correct?
Right, about quarantining. Yeah. And we'll fight. Hopefully no one's been on a cruise lately, but yeah, if anyone's traveled outside of the country or for those unforeseen things, those protocols will still be in place for them to quarantine for 14 days. Or if they've been exposed to someone that's tested positive for COVID, that they would also quarantine.
Yes, let me ask about that. Will we have access to those kinds of records? And I don't want to open up Pandora's box, but perhaps I do. No, we want what? Who's saying no? You, Rocky, or was that?
Oh, no, let's be clear. That's Mr. Jones. I would never tell you no. No.
Say we've had students who've traveled out of state and been wherever they've been, and now they're back in state, or they may have been out of state and became ill, and we don't know. Are we requiring any of that kind of information so that we can know in the distant future if little Joy has been in Alabama and was ill? Are we checking any health records since they left us? I'm just thinking, I'm not.
Yeah, are you talking students now or employees?
Well, I really am thinking both, but I was really thinking more about students and at this moment.
No, I mean, I'm sure we've had employees that have traveled around different parts of the state and traveled maybe to Georgia or Alabama or Atlanta. I mean, whatever. There's really no way to track that, I don't think. And a lot of this is on the honor system. I mean, even with the quarantine, you're on the honor system here. And the bottom line is we all need to be responsible citizens in order to protect each other.
I know. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Jones.
I'd like to move consent.
All right, are we ready to move on to the consent agenda? If without objection, let's take up the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, really quickly, before we do that, just want to announce, so we
Oh.
don't miss it again,
I'm sorry.
no public comment.
No public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Then
Thank
I second that then.
All right, the consent agenda has been moved by Mr. Jones and seconded by Ms. Bowen without objection. Show it unanimously approved. That takes us to the construction consent agenda.
The who? I'm sorry.
Item 18.
Item 8.
Oh. I got to see what that is.
Consent agenda on construction items. If someone would like to make a motion in a second, and I will abstain in the abundance of caution and upon the recommendation of legal counsel and ethics counsel, I am abstaining from any appearance of a conflict.
Move approval.
I move approval. Sorry. Second.
Moved by Ms. Striplin, second by Ms. Bowen. Without objection, show it unanimously approved as Mr. Jones, I don't see here. So 3 votes in favor and 1 abstention.
Sorry, here I am.
He's there.
You want to show your vote in the affirmative on the item 18? Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones. Show it unanimously approved with 4 votes and 1 abstention. Thank you.
I'm in trouble.
Yeah, you are.
All right, that takes us to the consideration agendas. Item 19.01, Mr. Superintendent.
Madam Chair, we talked extensively about this issue yesterday, and I think Ms. McKinney-Williams did a good job of explaining why this item with you. Ms. McKinney-Williams, you want to just kind of give a brief synopsis of what the discussion was yesterday?
Yes, this item is coming to the board to add to the policy certain provisions that were in the procedure that that staff are presently working through. This policy has been before the board before. At the conclusion of that process, district staff started working through the procedure, and as they went through the procedure, they realized there were certain provisions that need to be added. So that's why we have this agenda item.
So for those who have the agenda in front of them, okay, this is moved by Ms. Wood, second by Mr. Jones. Let me just explain for the good of the public. This item is the policy on the use of marijuana, which is required by law. The legislature has required school districts to implement this policy. So
Medical marijuana.
medical marijuana, excuse me.
Yes.
Please clarify.
Yes, medical marijuana as per the legislative statute
Right.
and law of the state of Florida, of which we are all required to uphold. Moved and seconded. Is there any objection?
None.
Unanimously approved. That takes us to item 18.02. This is the charter renewal for the Tallahassee School for Math and Science on North Monroe Street.
19.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Uh,
I'm going to
19.2.
ask Justin Williamson to give a brief review of what was discussed yesterday. Mr. Williamson.
Right, 19.02. Thank you. Mr. Williamson.
Good afternoon, or good evening, board members, Mr. Superintendent. So this is the 5-year renewal for Tallahassee School of Math and Science. So we received their application for renewal back in the fall. So subsequently, we convened a charter school review committee made up of all the various district department heads. And so we went through a review of the application that was received, as well as an instructional visit, and then some follow-up meetings with the school as well. The charter school committee unanimously recommended to the superintendent and subsequently to you that the school be renewed for an additional 5 years. Should this motion pass today, we will enter into contract negotiations with the school, which will come back to the board.
I move the superintendent's recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Motion by Ms. Bowen, by Ms. Striplin. Mr. Jones, is there a question?
Yes. I just want to be very clear and make it a part of the public record about what remains my ongoing concern about charter schools in our community. However, my opinions have also been enlightened and have subsequently matured throughout the course of my time of having been elected to this Leon County School Board. I'm delighted to support any initiative that would continue the great work being done at this particular school. One, because it's a Title I school. Secondly, it enjoys a diverse student population. However, my colleagues and others have reminded me of what is the law of the land. May I also remind my colleagues that Jim Crow was once the law of the land. Let me also remind my colleagues that slavery was once the law of the land. And I will remain a conscientious objector to all new charter schools that will come into our community unless they are led by parents and offer a different type of paradigm of instruction that we don't presently offer in our Leon County schools. This is a long-time charter school that has successfully served the diverse student populations found in our community, so I don't have a problem with supporting it. But my adamant rejection of the charter school movement remains the same, regardless of the law of the land. So I add my yes vote to this motion.
All right, we had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any objection? Show it unanimously approved. That takes us to item 19.03, just the amendments to the school board calendar.
Amen, Brother Jones. And don't ever say you matured past your line of thinking, because we think exactly alike on this issue. I promise you. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. 1903, Dr. Gale.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Superintendent, and board members. 1903 was an item that was added this morning per your recommendation. On it, we are having a school board agenda review on May the 20th at 3:00 p.m. We're also deleting the May 26th school board meeting and adding a Monday, June 1st school board agenda review and a Tuesday, June 2nd school board meeting.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Wood, second by Mr. Jones. All in favor?
Give it to Ms. Bowen.
Okay. We'll go with you, Mr. Jones. Moved by Ms. Wood, second by Mr. Jones. Without objection, show it unanimously approved. All right, I think that takes us, sorry, I'm looking away from the camera to see my agenda. Item 20 and 21, it does not appear that we have anything under until we get to 22.01, the superintendent's comments. Mr. Superintendent, do you have additional comments this evening?
Briefly, Madam Chair. Dr. Gale, can you jump back on and give me the information about the Best and Brightest ceremony tomorrow night?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. The Best and Brightest ceremony will take place virtually. It's going to be broadcast from the Howell Building, where we normally have meetings. And thank you for the Chamber, Laura Rogers, Ron Sachs, of course, our superintendent, and Denver Lee. He will be taking all of this information and broadcasting it out. It starts at 6:00 p.m. A link will be coming out if it hasn't already done so, but it will take place in the Howell Building.
So again, to Dr. Gale's points, a big shout out to Ron Sachs and Laura Rogers, World Class Schools, the Chamber, all the people that are involved with this. As they say, the show must go on, right? And our seniors, unfortunately, have been robbed of so much already. It was very important to Ron and their team that we continue with this wonderful program to acknowledge these amazing seniors from throughout our community in both public and private and homeschool for all that they've done academically, on the athletic field, in the arts, but most importantly, what they've done to give back to help others. And we're proud to be a part of it and encourage all members of our community to tune in to just see how wonderful a class this is. And as they would say, I guess, class of 2020, we consider them the best class ever, right? They're certainly the most resilient.
Yes, they are. And, I thought about that. Typically, this is our most hectic time of year, and it's proving to be no less hectic, even though virtual. But we often, we find ourselves sitting on the front row of Ruby Diamond for this event, or shaking a million hands for our many, many different award ceremonies, and appreciation to all of our volunteers and all of our you know, the people who contribute so much to our system. So I'm saddened. This time every year, my hand feels like it's breaking from all the shaking hands. And I'm sad. I miss it. And I wish that we could do this live and in person, but we're making the best with what we've got. And I appreciate all that's happening to make that happen. So in whatever way that we can celebrate our senior class and also all those classes that are moving up. You know, I remember I still have a video of my kids when their 5th grade, it wasn't a graduation, but a promotion ceremony from when they went from Gilchrist into middle school. And we actually watched some home videos the other night, and it, you know, there are those times, those coming of age moments when it just, you know, there are all these things that our students at every level are, you know, more so at those promotion stages are missing out on. So anyway, our hearts are with them and their families, and we appreciate opportunities to at least be virtual. So thank you for that. All right. I believe that we are about to adjourn unless anyone else has anything to add. Ms. Wood, I see your hand.
I didn't want to add, but we had such a long discussion about our drive-in graduation last time. And since then, I saw that the rules have gone out, and I thought it might be an opportunity for the superintendent just to sort of go over what the plan is with the public, since it's the first time we've ever done it this way. So I just wanted to bring that up. Maybe superintendent would like to comment.
Yeah, absolutely, Ms. Wood. And to your point, yes, our drive-in graduation ceremonies are scheduled for May 26th, 27th, 28th at the Leon County Civic Center. But instead of being inside, we will be outdoors. One ceremony will begin at 8:30 a.m. Starting with Ms. Striplin's alma mater, Lincoln High School. Go Trojans! And then that evening, I believe, is Rickards High School. Leon. The next morning, Godby that night, and then I think Childs the next morning, and then Sale, Miss Wood, your school that you founded, will finish things off on Thursday evening. We're very excited. Yes, we sent out rules to all of our principals and our students who will be participating. We have met extensively in that parking lot. We spent 6 hours last week meeting with every single school for 1 hour to talk about all the things logistical that come into play. Chief Hunkyar has a manual, safety manual for the event. The expectations are laid out. They're very clear of what's expected and what's not expected to happen. And I'm just excited and proud that we can give our kids a chance to gather together. My daughter Alice, they had a drive-through ceremony. It was it was just, I don't know. I just felt like we could do more. Yes, this is different. It's one of a kind. I know in other counties I've seen, in mainly rural counties, where they are allowing and putting 1,000 or 2,000 people on the football field at these stadiums. That to me makes no sense at all. But this is in a controlled environment with our cars. I think we've addressed as many issues as we could possibly address, given the different scenarios of our students. You know, we've made adjustments for families that don't have cars or maybe don't have air conditioning. I had another follow-up conversation with the Department of Health. They got some feedback on emissions. They assured me they had no emissions issues, which was also good news. So I think we've addressed just about everything we possibly could and made exceptions where we could. I'm again excited. A lot of work has gone into this. You all have each been given a school to come and give remarks for the school that's in your district, and we welcome that. And to give our kids a chance to celebrate as much as they possibly can their class and what they've accomplished over their last 13 years in our public school system. But it has been a yeoman's effort and a lot of work and a lot of planning. And so just fingers crossed that we have good weather. But all in all, I'm very excited to bring this to our community and to our 2,500 graduates.
Mr. Superintendent, I dare not say it, but just in case there is not good weather, is there a rain date just in case? I don't want to.
Yes, ma'am. So we've contracted with the company out of Tampa. Those digital boards come with 3 technicians that we're putting up in hotel rooms. Friday morning will be the the makeup day, the makeup morning in case something happens. And if we had to double up on Friday and do an 8:30 and a 10:30, then we
Okay.
can certainly do that. We know the ceremonies for the large high schools, Leon, Lincoln, and Childs, will be around an hour, maybe an hour and 5 minutes at the most. And then Guyby, Rickards, and then Sale, of course, will not even reach the hour mark. But again, I'm thankful to all of the people on my team that have been a part of this. And like I said, I don't want to not do something for fear that our kids won't do the right thing. And I just believe in them. I believe they're going to do the right thing. They're going to stay in their vehicles. We're going to celebrate this moment. We have a DJ that went to Lincoln High School that's going to live remote. They're going to do a pre-graduations party as they're pulling in. We have pomp and circumstance. We have some special things planned for the tassel after the tassel's moved. We have flags flying. I mean, we're going to make this a once in a lifetime event, and it's
excited.
It's never happened. I mean, we've had graduation ceremonies for 38 years, dating back to me, but never one like this. So it'll be one of a kind.
Only David. Just a minute, Mr. Jones, I'm calling on you right now, but if everybody else could mute because you can hear every little thing, that would be helpful. Mr. Jones, you're recognized.
Did I understand the superintendent to say that I have an hour for my comments?
No, you get a chance to tell them, my dear graduates, the best is yet to come. Thank you, Daryl Jones. No, we each get a minute, 90 seconds at the most. And then for me, guys, y'all know me, that's going to be about impossible. But even I'm going to adhere to that 90-second rule. We want to get on. They don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from their principal and more importantly, from their peers. So I'm excited to bring this drive-in ceremony to our students.
I'm just going to throw this out there, not to be addressed tonight, but Dr. Gale, if you could follow up with us on attire, are we going to have regalia like normal or just let us know?
Yes, ma'am. Your regalia has been ordered. It will be in place, but I will follow up.
Thank you, ma'am. All right. Is there, for the good of the order, are all minds clear? Is there anyone else who has anything they'd like to add? Ms. Striplin.
Thank you. I just want to thank Superintendent for his creativity and his ongoing, undying, tireless efforts during this whole thing to recognize our seniors and to recognize all of our children. That the parents are so grateful, and I appreciate your willingness to work with the families who are struggling with the one car issue. I greatly appreciate that that concern and working with those families that deal with issues that are private and should remain private, but that so both parents can participate in this ceremony.
Okay, Mr. Jones, one more time.
I agree with Ms. Striplin. Thank you so very much, Mr. Superintendent, for all that you have done.
Madam Chair.
You and your executive team have done. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I agree with Mr. Jones and Ms. Striplin. Ditto, ditto.
All right. I'm sorry. All minds clear.
All minds.
You're not going to agree? Ditto, ditto, ditto.
Everybody's nodding their head. All right. Ms. Wood moves we adjourn. We are adjourned.
Wow.